To all JCA teachers, life has been very crazy lately, but your work has continued. To e-learning some days and in-person the others, you continue to teach us to be great young men and women. Despite the inconsistent schedule, your perseverance and drive to teach us every day has remained. All Hillmen and Angels want to say thank you for all that you have done.
Thank you to our Theology department for your commitment to teaching us about our faith. Thank you, Father Jeff, Father Neppy, Mr. Burke, Mr. McDermott, Mr. Passell, and Mr. Keller for continuing to educate us through this past year.
This year I had Father Neppy for theology, and I had him last year too. He's really welcoming when you don't know much about theology and when you don't know anyone. We are coming from a new school, and we're really going to miss him a lot next year.
Thank you to our campus ministers, Father Jeff and Mrs. Farrow. You have made sure that every Kairos, even during the pandemic, is perfect, and we're so grateful. Thank you.
Campus ministry is an amazing and accepting place where you can go to if you need any help with literally anything. And I got the honor of being with Mrs. Farrow and Father Jeff on Kairos twice, and they're really just extremely helpful people.
Father Jeff is hands down one of the coolest guys I know. He always has high spirits, and my favorite memories of him is doing masses for the football team. Really gets us jazzed up and gives us something to play for. So Father Jeff, you've always been one of my most favorite people.
Thank you to our science teachers, Mr. Borello, Mrs. Barrett, Mr. Ziesbert, Mrs. Stockel, Mrs. Gavillas, and Mr. Morset. Thank you for continuing to make science challenging and interesting during COVID-19.
I had Mr. Borello for freshman year biology, and he really helped make the transition to high school a lot easier. His class was a lot of fun, and he made sure that each of us knew what we were doing.
Thank you to our social studies department for your interesting lessons during lockdown. Thank you to Mr. Midlock, Mr. Gura, Mr. Clark, and Mr. Hanson, Mr. Kramer, Mrs. Gonzala, and Mr. Ivlo. We appreciate all of your hard work.
I had two teachers I really liked from the history department, Mr. Midlock and Mr. Clark. Mr. Midlock really keeps the students engaged and makes learning fun, and Mr. Clark has a great sense of humor and really connects with all the students.
Thank you to the art teachers, Mrs. Stoiber, Mrs. Powell, Mr. McDermott, whether it was through video demonstrations or delivering pottery clay to our homes. Thank you for finding ways to bring art into our lives during a pandemic.
Hi, I'm Olivia Westberg, and I'm here to talk about the art department and about Miss P. So she actually left, but she was my favorite teacher here for a long time, and I had no desire to take art or anything about it. And I took it my sophomore year, and Miss P taught me everything I learned. She was an amazing teacher, and she understood that kids needed time off and just a break from everything. And she taught me a lot about art, and she made me a great artist, and I actually did pottery for another year this year. And I plan to take it again next year to keep my skills going, and yeah, she was an amazing teacher.
Thank you to our English teachers, Mr. Allgood, Dr. Fisher, Mrs. Scheibe, Mr. Bomer, Mrs. Bush, Mrs. Mackey, Mr. Buds, Mrs. Sherwin, Mrs. Arnett, and Dr. Bailey. Thank you for having high expectations and helping us to improve our ratings so that we are prepared for college and beyond.
Thanks to the English department, especially Dr. Fisher, for keeping us smiling during the pandemic and assigning us fun assignments and keeping us all sane.
Thank you to Mrs. Douglas, Mrs. Sherwin, Mrs. Arnett, Mrs. Jasper, and our awesome academic resource program. Thank you for helping students continue to strive for success and prepare for college during our lockdown.
Mrs. Sherwin really helped me stay on track with my homework and schoolwork.
Thank you to our math teachers, Mr. Akel, Mrs. Osborne, Mr. Schneider, Mr. Gladdy, Ms. Mahalich, Mrs. Barrett, Mrs. Stockel, Dr. Pender, Mr. Douglas, Mrs. Stockel, and Ms. Reyes. Teaching a subject like math online is not easy. Your efforts to teach us math during the pandemic have been very appreciated.
Thank you to our PE teachers, Ms. Gill, Mr. Voss, Mr. Jaworski. Thanks for expecting us to get off the couch and exercise during this pandemic.
We're appreciative of Jaws keeping in touch with his players during quarantine and bringing the juice every day to practice.
Coach Voss is a great guy. He's kept in touch with us during COVID. A great role model for all baseball players at JCA.
Merci, Madam Ostroms. Gracias, Senor DeBarlo, Senor Farrell, Senora Esvido, Brother Roberto, and Padre Nepi. We appreciate your dedication in helping us continue to learn foreign language during this pandemic.
Senor is a great teacher because I'm someone that was never very good at Spanish, and he made time for all of his students and for me especially, come up ways to become better at Spanish, and he just made class very fun and easy.
Thank you to our tech department, Mr. Jones, Mr. O'Brien, Mrs. Schertz, and Mrs. Ostrom. Thank you for keeping our tech going during this pandemic, keeping our teachers trained, showing our students how to use Microsoft Teams, helping students with tech issues during the pandemic, and communicating with our school through weekly video broadcasts.
Thank you to our music department and drama department for continuing to deliver us the gift of music and theater, whether it was learning the guitar, playing an instrument, learning handbells, or staying upbeat at the loss of our spring musical last spring. Thank you, Miss Seinel, Miss Kelstrom, Mrs. Jasper, Mr. Vollmer, and Mrs. Schertz.
I had Miss Seinel since freshman year with drama club, and I also had her sophomore year for guitar. She's so welcoming to all the new people, and she makes learning music really, really fun. Rehearsals and shows are so much fun with her, and we're so thankful for her.
Thank you to our guidance counselors, Mrs. Horn, Mrs. Major, Mrs. Volz, Mrs. Pulara, Mr. Gilbert, and our diversity director, Mrs. Cameron, and their administrative assistant, Mrs. Scordo. Thank you for always giving us a place to come and talk and giving us all the guidance we need.
Thank you to our student council moderators who continue to meet with us so that we could continue leading our school and find ways to serve our community, even during the pandemic when our school was shut down. Thank you, Mrs. Scordo, Mrs. Ragusa, Ms. Seinel, Mrs. Polera, Mrs. Arnett, Mrs. Ostrom, and Senor DeBartolo.
Just two.
Thank you to our athletic department, Mr. Dan Sharp, Mrs. Debbie Dispenza, Mr. Dave Douglas, and Mrs. Tina Kinsella, but most of all, to all our coaches. We can't thank you enough for keeping us inspired during the school year when we have lost entire seasons during this pandemic. You have kept our spirits up and motivated us, and have genuinely cared for us during this difficult time.
Coach O'Brien really pushes us in practice and in games, and is a really good coach to all of us.
Him being young, he relates to us very well. You know, he can crack jokes, keep everything young, so he's life of the party.
Thank you to all of our club moderators for keeping our clubs going during the pandemic.
Thank you to our nurses. What would our school have done without you during this pandemic? You trained our staff and kept us updated on the COVID-19 guidelines so the students and staff were always safe. You cared for us and you worked overtime to ensure the safety of everyone at school. We know you worked tirelessly so that we could be back at school, and we know part of the reason we're all here today is because of your hard work and dedication. Thank you to Mrs. Verselli, Mrs. McGinnis, Mrs. Paleo, Mrs. Malarchik, Mrs. Bodosich, and Mrs. Huey.
Thank you to the wonderful women who support the school in so many ways, whether it's paying the bills, answering the phones, sending out report cards, ordering the great JCA apparel for our spirit shop, or helping all of our athletes with their schedules. Thank you to Ms. Karras, Ms. Reichstadt, Ms. Catalani, Ms. Scordo, Ms. Gorski, Ms. Dispenza, Ms. Johansson, Sister Maria, Ms. Goolsby, and Ms. Blackburn. We would also like to remember Ms. Rosie Costa, who we lost this past year, for her years of dedication to our school and our students.
Thank you.
Thank you to our janitors and maintenance department, Jose Lopez, Pepe Herrera, Manny Santos, Fiel Lara, and as well as Keith Klein, Joe Supergan, and Nate Peterson. We know that you have worked tirelessly to not only keep our school clean, maintained, the snow plowed, and streets salted, but during COVID you have had time to move the entire classrooms out of the gym at a moment's notice so that we can have a game or practice, just to put it back together the next day. You are always so kind and friendly to the students, and we want you to know how appreciated you are.
Thank you.
Thank you to the women who make and deliver our lunches each day. Shannon Lardson, Dana Kinsella, Joan Chamberlain, and the other members of Quest Food Service. We appreciate not having to pack a lunch and having something to eat each day.
Thank you, Mrs. Bebar, for figuring out creative ways to have social distance events like alumni golf outings and successfully supporting our school financially. And thank you to Mrs. Hanson in the Development Office for your hard work and dedication to our school for raising money through the annual fund to help offset the school's budget. We appreciate the hard work and dedication that you give to our school.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley and Mrs. Ragusa, for all the hard work in the admissions office. We know it has not been easy to continue showing junior high students our school during the pandemic. We know that you have worked tirelessly to help families with financial assistance and scholarships along with Mrs. Horn.
Thank you to Mr. Horn for raising money for the capital campaign so we can have special things at our school like the Student Innovative Research Center. Thank you, Mrs. Voss, for hosting special events like Jubilaté. We appreciate your dedication to the students so that we can continue to enjoy our education at JCA.
Thank you to our Dean of Students, Mrs. Susie Arnett, Mr. Kevin Lass, and Mrs. Tina Kinsella for your dedication to our students during the pandemic and afterward.
Finally, thank you to our administration, Mrs. Susie Arnett, Ms. Laura Paul, Mrs. Charlotte Tortorio, Dr. Bill Pender, and Dr. Jeffrey Buds. Thank you for your commitment to our school, the teachers, staff, students, and our family during the pandemic. We appreciate everything you have done so that our school has been safe and so that we could have as normal of a school year as possible during this difficult time. We are grateful.
Good morning, everyone.